What's up, man? Welcome back to my shop. You did a handheld thing, so I thought I would do one too. So your video is really informative, and it's cool to see all the stuff that you have. I have a couple of pointers and a couple of ideas and stuff that I want to toss your way. As someone who kind of did that exact same thing and got some gifts and got some, some random tools mishmashed and whatever, and kind of have been honing it over the last couple of years, and give you some pointers on what to actually get and what you should get. Okay, who am I kidding? I need a tripod. I talk with my hands. Okay, so your saw is really, let's actually focus. Okay, your saw is great, but I would probably never use it. I am not a fan of American style push saws. I am, however, a fan of Japanese pull saws, and I highly recommend you get 1 or 3 of these. This is kind of a small one, but they come in a bunch of different styles and sizes. Most of them are about $30 or so, which sounds like a lot, but you get a lot of saw for that money. And what's cool is, so I'm sure you're aware of what a Japanese pull saw is, but in case you're not, they tend to look something like this, and they are designed to cut on the pull stroke instead of the push like American saws. And what that means is you have a tremendous amount of control over the cuts that you make. It lets you do very fine kind of work. It's like the difference between writing with a paint marker versus like a pencil. Like, you just get a little bit finer control, and it lets you be more precise in what you do. The other benefit to pull saws is they are just, let me show you. This is a fine tooth. This is a fine tooth saw, as you can see, just single edged. But the benefit is, I can camera, but the benefit of a saw like this is these blades are just stamped out of steel, so they can stay really, really sharp easily, but more importantly, you just replace them. So, in fact, right here, you can see it gives you kind of visual instructions on how to replace the blade. And the best part is these blades are like $10 or $15 tops. So it's really easy to keep a good saw on hand, like all the time. I got this one at Rockler, and Rockler has the fine tooth mini version, this a more larger tooth saw of this size, and then they have like a bigger version. They also have one that's the larger size, that's two-sided, so you get like a fine tooth on one side and a large tooth on the other. That's the one I would go for you. It'll give you more options, and I actually have this one. This is a DeWalt pull saw that's like meant to be angled. It's really flexible, all that good stuff. The same as all the other saws, but this is obviously a larger blade. You can see, obviously larger, and the tooth pattern is much, much bigger. So what's great about this saw is, 1, I got it at Home Depot. 2, it was about the same price as this one, but also has a removable blade so that you can easily purchase new ones. The downside is these are actually shockingly hard to find at Home Depot. Nobody that I even talked to knew what a pull saw was. So they only have this one. They don't have extra blades. It's kind of a pain. So that's the biggest tool suggestion I have for you, is to get a pull saw instead. Other suggestions is buy Costco shop towels, because they're super cheap that way, and you can get 30 rolls of them, and they're excellent. It's the blue rolls. I have a couple of big packs worth. I also think that your hammer's fine. Like, I just have like this random fiberglass hammer that works for everything really that I need a hammer for. When I'm doing like fine chisel work, sometimes I'll use this and just really choke up and just tap on it with the head. Sometimes I'll just use a piece of scrap wood. If you want a mallet, I highly recommend making one. There's a couple of good YouTube videos that I'll link up here for you that show you how to make really, really nice ones. They're pretty easy to do. Buying one's cheap and easy and all that stuff, but making one is a really good project, just to learn woodworking. Okay, next up I want to talk about clamps, because clamps, you're right, you can never have too many of them. I've got them freaking everywhere. You can see like squeeze clamp. I've got a quick clamp right there. I've got clamps everywhere. However, I would advise you to look at bar clamps instead of pipe clamps for two reasons. One, pipe clamps are heavy as hell and they're difficult to deal with. I've had like a dozen at a time before and they're just a pain in the ass to deal with. And two, bar clamps can be a little bit more expensive, but if you find them on sale, they can be as cheap or sometimes even cheaper than the same size bar clamp or pipe clamp. This is a bar clamp. It's just a bar of extruded aluminum with some hardware on it, similar to a pipe clamp. But what's great about bar clamps is the feet on them tend to keep everything nice and level, so you can do glue ups really easily that way. The second part is they're just, in my opinion, easier to deal with because they weigh nothing, but are still nice and strong. These ones I got at Harbor Freight, 36 inches, plenty long enough. I've got 4 or 5 of this size, good for decent glue ups. Rockler often has a lot of good sales on bar clamps like this, of varying sizes, but I recommend starting with like, if you're gonna get bar clamps, I recommend starting with 36 inches because it's good for like most glue ups of tabletops, even of like this size here, because it's just big enough. But obviously you can glue up small stuff too, so like it pays a little bit more to spend the extra like $5 or $10 for this size over a smaller size just for the versatility of it. As far as chisels go, you're spot on with that construction chisel. That big padded handle it's a construction chisel, so it's meant to be scraping and just splitting wood and stuff. Use that for household shit like you have been. Scraping the plastic and gunk off stuff. Perfect. Get yourself a set of Sweetheart chisels, which I mysteriously don't have in my shop right now. I don't know where they are. They're probably in storage. But they look like this. Sweetheart is a Stanley model of chisel, but it's kind of been replicated to death. You can even have like, even have this kind of plastic, small end, but like a plastic style chisel for more fine woodworking. This long tang is what you want to look for. There's a couple of different videos and stuff which I'll link to in the doobly-doo of like breakdowns of styles of chisel, but you can see, or maybe you can't, this is a like a low angle chisel, so it's really good for mortising and tendons and things like that. There's high angle chisels which are better for other things. I'll just link the videos, they'll describe it better than I can. Next, again, moving on. Your random orbital sander is excellent, but it's really good for large area works or things where you want to take a lot of material off at once. I recommend you get yourself a nice big bucket or bin and get sheet papers. I have a bunch of different types. I really like these Harbor Freight ones, the wet or dry of like multi-pack of grits, because I use a lot of really fine stuff, so being able to wet sand helmets or whatever is really convenient. But this Harbor Freight stuff is like really freaking cheap, so I don't care that I burn through a lot of it. The number one thing I will say to you when sanding is like throw away your sandpaper. I use sandpaper far too long. It gets gunked up and it's not effective anymore, and I will just keep using it, and it takes so much longer to sand, and it's like sandpaper's not that expensive, like just throw it away, use fresh sandpaper more often, and like your life will just be better all the way around. This stuff is my favorite. It's like the Cubitron 2 or whatever version. This stays rock solid forever. I lied. That's my second favorite. I don't have any of my first favorite because I've used it all. It's like professional grade. It's usually white or semi-clear sandpaper, and it's like stretchy a little bit. That stuff is magic. Which is why I don't have any, because I've used it all. It is by a wide margin the best sandpaper, but it is kind of a pain. Also, sanding sponges are perfect for complex curves. So a thing like a helmet, you can sand with sheets, right? But if you have something like this hex pattern, it will like conform to the helmet shape, and it's so much better to shave or to sand. So when you're doing things like curves on a table or like the curve of a seat, for example, a sanding sponge is perfect for that. It applies even pressure over like a wide area of curve. It's amazing. Do not underestimate sanding sponges. All that is just to say, do not be afraid to sand by hand. Chisels, planes, saws, and sandpaper are way better by hand. It's a lot faster to do those things with a power tool, obviously, but that introduces a lot more variance, a lot more risk of fucking up work, whatever. Doing it by hand lets you get like really intimate with the work that you're doing, and that will make like 7 grade work up to 10 or 11. Like really, all you have to do is do it by hand, and it will instantly take your work to another level. Okay, 2 more quick points, and then I have a suggestion for you. First, the basting brush is genius. Steve Ramsey is obviously way better at things than I am, but I used basting brushes for a while in the beginning as well for glue, and then I switched over to the Rockler wood glue brushes because they're still like $3 a brush. I also don't have any. They got lost in the move somewhere. They're like $3 a brush, but they're chisel tipped, so the bristles are cut at an angle and they're smaller, so it's easier to work with glue. They're not all floppy. The other benefit is on the reverse side, they have like a chisel spatula side, so you can spread glue like really easily that way. Highly recommend those when you get through your basting brushes because they're not much more expensive, if at all, and they're way more utility focused, so you can do a lot more with that brush. Also, Titebond 3 is excellent glue, it's waterproof, all that stuff, but it does dry dark, so be aware of that. Some wood glues, like I usually use Titebond 2 because it dries a little bit lighter and is almost as waterproof. That's basically the only real difference. Steve Ramsey again has an excellent video on glues, comparison between all of them, but basically Titebond 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. They're all great. Just know that Titebond 3 dries dark. On purpose, it's supposed to be dark. So if you are using it on like some really light wood or something, just know that you're gonna have some dark seams. Okay, last little bit. Your sawhorse table stand thing idea is excellent. Those sawhorses are super beast, man. That's wild. What I recommend doing though is taking your plywood and screwing 2x4s underneath it so that you can kind of sandwich in that sawhorse so that the edge vices up front, those 2 vice things on each sawhorse, you can free up to use as edge vices while you're planing or sawing or whatever. That is, having a vise on the end of your table is so useful. So I would recommend finding a way to secure that tabletop on the vise or on those sawhorses without using each end, so that you can actually put work in those edge vices there and do work that way. That's what I would do. I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend, oh yeah, no, we're going handheld again. I also highly recommend snagging this kind of plywood. This is marine grade plywood, so there's basically no gaps in these layers, which means that it is extremely strong. It's really nice. This is finished, so it's all glossy and nice on one side. I think a full sheet of this cost me like $45, but you can have them cut it in half or whatever so that it works to your needs. That's what I would do. That's the nicest plywood that will make a really nice tabletop that you'll enjoy working on. Because I find with this thing, I enjoy working on a big, sturdy, nice table more, so I'm more likely to do the work there instead of like putting it off or whatever. And that's the last thing I would recommend is whatever the shit you end up doing, whatever system works for you, just find a way like that it works for you so that you enjoy doing the work and it's not a chore, because that is the worst, man. So what am I working on? Well, I'm finishing up a new model of the Mando helmet, which is what's finishing printing right there. I'm also working on a couple of dice molds, which you can see there and here, of this like fancy crystalline style dice. I've got a couple of molds. I'm going to be doing that as part of probably the next video that I make, which will be testing out finishes and top coats and stuff for the Mandalorian helmet, so I can get as close as humanly possible while using that graphite, so I can find the right top coat and what have you, so that graphite really shines and is as close to movie accurate as possible. So that's what I'm working on. Let me know if you take any of that advice I gave you to heart. Otherwise, I don't know, man. I'll see you on the podcast or on your next video or whatever. Bye.